Welcome back to Billionaire Heart Stories, family. Thank you so much for your incredible support and for choosing to spend your time with us today. You all make this channel what it is, and we're so grateful for each and every one of you. Now, before we dive into today's story, I need to ask you something. Have you ever met someone that everyone was terrified of? Someone so powerful, so untouchable, that even speaking their name made people nervous? Well, today's story is about exactly that kind of person. But here's the twist. What if the person everyone feared wasn't the real villain? What if the truth was buried so deep that it took one brave soul to uncover it? Stay with me until the end, because what happens in this story will leave you speechless. And trust me, the secret that gets revealed, you won't see it coming. Now, let's begin. The entire mansion went silent. Not because someone shouted, not because something broke, but because someone did the unthinkable. In the center of the grand mahogany-paneled library, bathed in the sharp, expensive light of the afternoon sun, Alara Sterling, the matriarch's fiercely respected protégé, raised her hand high and sharp. It wasn't aimed at a slap, but at a stack of important, fragile blueprints laid on the antique desk. Her movements, usually calculated and precise, were now fueled by pure, terrifying fury. "Incompetence," she hissed, her voice a low, vibrating wire of contained anger that was far more unnerving than a scream. "This entire floor plan is wrong. Get out, all of you, before I fire every single person in this room. The architects, the junior partners, even the longtime security detail, all froze. They knew what was coming next. The fury that didn't land in a slap often landed in a dismissal, a character assassination that no one in the city's professional circles ever recovered from. The matriarch's protégé always destroyed something, a document, a reputation, or the hope of a steady paycheck when she was angry. And today, Alara was terrifyingly, silently angry. But something strange happened. A hand moved across the desk, not softly, not fearfully, but with the quiet, inherent strength of polished steel. It didn't catch Alara's wrist. It simply and firmly covered the precious, century-old blueprint documents that were about to be shredded by her manicured nails. It was the new house manager, Maya, a quiet woman, a professional who had only started 3 days ago, a person whom nobody expected to even interrupt Alara's breathing, much less stop her destructive impulse in front of a dozen witnesses. But here she was. Her hand was steady, her expression calm, and her presence commanded more silence than Alara's rage. She didn't look at Alara. She looked only at the blueprints, treating the fragile documents with the respect Alara currently refused to grant them. Every nervous executive and staff member gasped. "What? What do you think you're doing?" Alara finally shouted, shocked and shaking not with rage now, but with disbelief at the blatant, professional interference. Her authority had been checked. Maya slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were calm. "Miss Sterling," she said, her voice measured and quiet enough that everyone strained to hear, "I must ask that you refrain from damaging these foundation plans. They are originals. While I understand your frustration, destroying property is not an acceptable solution for this household or for the Sterling Foundation." She didn't let go of the papers. Her hand stayed strong. Her eyes stayed calm. She was not challenging the protégé. She was simply stating the rules of the house to which she was the house manager. And then, unknown to everyone in the library, Mrs. Sterling, the matriarch herself, stood just outside the French doors leading to the conservatory. She was returning from a phone call with her lawyer. She stopped walking. She heard the controlled tension and the sharp exchange. She turned her head slowly. Then she saw it. Her formidable, ruthless protégé, frozen in mid-fury, being quietly held in check by a woman in a perfectly tailored gray suit. Mrs. Sterling didn't move. She didn't speak. She just watched. A flicker of something unreadable. Not anger, but perhaps fascination crossing her cold face. Her heart beat faster because this new manager wasn't scared. This was the first time in years someone had treated Alara like a subordinate rather than a threat. And the next words Alara shouted shook the entire house with frustration. "Let go of those papers," I said. "Let go now." But Maya's hand did not move. That moment, that single moment of quiet defiance, would change everything. And then a louder gasp echoed through the room because something even more shocking happened next. Elara tried to pull the papers away, her face turning crimson, her eyes widening with a blend of humiliation and impotent anger. Still nothing. Maya's gaze held steady, not provoking, merely enduring. From the doorway, Mrs. Sterling whispered to herself, "What? What kind of woman have I hired?" And just as she stepped forward, the one person whose presence would immediately shift the focus walked past her, looking into the room. A person who wasn't supposed to be there. Liam, the matriarch's only son, Elara's supposed rival for the Foundation presidency. But before we get to who he was and the secret Maya would unknowingly find, we must go back to the very beginning, because everything that happened in that library started long before this moment. Long before Maya ever stepped into the mansion. The story now shifts to a flashback, focusing on the new characters. The matriarch, Mrs. Sterling, the protege, Elar, and the house manager Maya, establishing the psychological conflict that leads to dramatic confrontation. The story began 3 weeks earlier, long before Maya's firm hand pressed down on the mahogany desk. Everyone who followed the philanthropic world knew about the Sterling family. Not because of loud scandals, but because of their calculated, immense wealth and the iron-willed matriarch at its head, Eleanor Sterling. Eleanor owned the Sterling Foundation, a global nonprofit, and wielded influence with the quiet, devastating power of a chess master. People respected her for her charity, but few saw the ruthless training she inflicted on her chosen successor, her beloved protege, Elara. Elara was everything society dictated a successor should be. Beautiful, meticulously dressed, frighteningly intelligent, and ruthlessly efficient. But just like Clarissa in the story model, Elara possessed two distinct faces. Outside the manor, Elara was charm personified. At galas and board meetings, she spoke softly about ethical investing and climate change. She smiled with genuine warmth, always prepared, always impeccable. She fooled everyone in the public eye. They saw a brilliant young woman being prepared to inherit a dynasty of goodwill. Inside the manor, she was a glacier, a cold, demanding force of perfectionism. She didn't shout or slap, but she used a weapon far more effective in that rarefied atmosphere: disappointment. A look of cold censure from Elara could ruin a senior executive's weekend. Her precise, non-negotiable demands made the household staff, from the chief butler to the personal chefs, walk on proverbial broken glass. They all needed the income that came with managing the Sterling household, and they endured Elara's emotional distance and constant pressure, knowing she held their futures in her hands. Elara's goal was simple: perfection. Her motivation was complex: the constant, crushing expectation of the matriarch. Eleanor Sterling did not tolerate weakness. She believed emotional attachments were liabilities, and she had spent years molding Elara into the perfectly isolated, high-functioning leader the foundation and the family demanded. Then, one Tuesday morning, the matriarch's longtime estate manager, Mr. Davies, gathered the senior staff. "We have a new house manager joining us today," he announced, his voice tight. "Her name is Maya Solis. She comes highly recommended for her discretion and her ability to organize complex family estates." The staffers exchanged worried glances. Another manager. They knew the drill. The turnover rate in the Sterling household was high, especially among those who worked closely with Elara. They were all either scared away by Elara's demands or subtly destroyed by the matriarch for showing too much initiative. When Maya walked in, the expectation shifted. She wasn't meek or overly eager. She was simply, powerfully, professional, calm, poised, impeccably dressed in a modern, practical suit. There was something about her eyes, deep brown, steady, that seemed to absorb the opulent, tense atmosphere without being overwhelmed by it. She carried herself not with the subservience of a servant, but with the quiet authority of a skilled executive. The senior butler, a man named Jeffrey who had seen countless managers come and go, pulled Maya aside shortly after her orientation. He spoke in low, hushed tones, delivering the necessary warning. "Welcome, Miss Solis. But let me give you the one rule that will ensure your survival here. Avoid Miss Elara Sterling at all costs. Maya gave a polite, measured nod. Understood, Jeffrey. But as house manager, my duties involve ensuring the seamless operation of her wing of the estate. Jeffrey sighed, leaning closer. You misunderstand. We all respect her position. But she is not just a boss. She is a test. She doesn't scream, but she looks at you, and you feel every mistake you have ever made. If she asks you to do something impossible, smile, agree, and make sure she never sees a single hair out of place. Show no personality, show no initiative, and show no pity. Pity? Maya asked, her brow furrowing slightly, the first hint of genuine confusion. Yes, Alara is being watched by the matriarch. Every emotion is a weakness. We have learned to keep our heads down and our empathy buried. If you see her stressed, if you see her alone, look away. She does not want your help, and showing you care is a professional liability. Jeffrey paused, his voice dropping further. She will chase you away like the others, perhaps not with fire, but with ice. Maya simply nodded, her expression returning to its perfect, calm neutrality. She understood the warnings, but deep inside her, she knew she wouldn't allow fear to dictate her work. She would maintain respect, she would work hard, and she would certainly avoid conflict until the third day, when everything changed, and the true cost of Alara's isolation would become tragically visible. This chapter brings the narrative back to the high-tension opening moment, detailing the immediate cause of the conflict and Maya's quiet, decisive action. We replace the missing bracelet with a missing file to fit the high-stakes professional environment of the matriarch's protégé. Amaka only nodded politely, but deep inside her, she knew she wouldn't allow anyone to treat her like a rag. Still, she stayed quiet. She worked hard. She avoided trouble until the third day, when everything changed. It started with something far more volatile than a diamond bracelet. The annual Foundation Impact Report. This report, containing millions of dollars in pledges and crucial projections, was due to the matriarch by 4 p.m. At 3:30 p.m., the hard copy master binder was missing from Alara's private office. Alara's reaction was immediate and terrifying. Who touched the final report? She demanded, her voice cutting through the silence of the library wing. Her eyes were sharp, scanning the few administrative staff present. Who moved my desk? The junior staff scattered like scared birds. This was worse than a missing piece of jewelry. This was a professional catastrophe. And in the Sterling manner, professional failure was a capital offense. Alara stormed into the adjoining reading room, screaming at the administrative assistants. She didn't push or hit, but her words were calculated strikes. Useless people, all of you, do you understand the cost of this error? You are a liability to the matriarch. I pay you to think, and you can't even secure a binder. She insulted everyone, making one nervous young intern weep silently by the fireplace. Then, her cold eyes landed on Maya, the new house manager, who was supervising the rearrangement of books on a shelf nearby. Maya was efficient, but she was too new to have mastered the necessary invisibility. You, new manager. Come here! Alara's voice cracked like a whip. Maya stepped forward slowly, maintaining a distance of professional respect. Did you, in your ridiculous attempt to organize, move, or touch that master report binder? Alara shouted, her face an inch from Maya's. No, Miss Sterling, Maya said softly, her composure unshakable. My duties do not involve the direct handling of proprietary Foundation documents. I was asked only to catalog the new additions in the West Wing. Alara's face twisted with pure fury. You dare talk back to me? You dare dispute my certainty with your petty justifications? Before anyone could blink, before anyone could look away, expecting the crushing verbal dismissal, Alara raised her hand. It wasn't an intended slap. Alara was too refined for that. But a devastating, high-speed motion aimed not at Maya's face, but at the fragile, ancient map Maya had just secured on the shelf, a family heirloom of incalculable value. Alara intended to destroy it, to inflict the psychological pain of destruction that the matriarch herself had long taught her to wield. The staff looked away, too scared to watch the irreplaceable map be torn to shreds. But when Alara's hand shot out, it didn't connect with the map, because Maya's hand shot up, not to stop the strike, but to cover the map. Firm, steady, and unshaking. The heel of Alara's hand hit the protective barrier of Maya's palm instead of the delicate parchment. That was the moment the entire mansion froze. Alara recoiled, more shocked by the defiance than the physical impact. She struggled to free her hand, which was now pressed firmly, accidentally, against the calm, strong obstruction. Her face turned red, flushed with embarrassment and disbelief. "What? What do you think you're doing?" Alara shouted, shocked and shaking in disbelief. Maya didn't let go of the object. Her hand stayed strong, a barrier protecting the family heirloom. Her eyes stayed calm, fixed only on the map beneath her palm. "Miss Sterling," Maya said, her voice dropping to a low, respectful but firm tone, "I cannot allow property damage. You will regain control of your temper, or you will remove yourself from this room." It was not a threat. It was a simple, professional directive. And then, unknown to everyone, the matriarch, Mrs. Eleanor Sterling, stood just outside the hallway. She had heard the noise, turned her head slowly, and saw the astonishing sight. Her protégé, the formidable, feared successor, held immobilized, not by strength, but by pure professional resolve. Mrs. Sterling didn't move. She didn't speak. She just watched, a strange, calculating light in her eyes. Her heart began beating faster because something inside her finally woke up. The new manager was not just a sheep, and the next words Alara shouted shook the entire house. "Let go of me," I said. "Let go now." This chapter adapts the witnesses arrive and escalation of pressure plot points, substituting the matriarch for the silent, watching billionaire, and introducing a neutral figure whose unexpected presence adds immediate, undeniable pressure on the protégé. "Let go of me," I said. "Let go now." Alara's shout bounced off the vaulted ceiling of the library. Her face was contorted, her dignity crumbling in front of the horrified staff. But Maya's hand did not move. Her strong grip protected the priceless map, and by extension, protected the moment from descending into complete chaos. The unspoken rule of the Sterling Manor, fear, Alara, and never interfere, had been shattered. And then, a loud, controlled gasp echoed through the room because something even more shocking than the confrontation occurred at the double doorway leading to the conservatory. The person who walked in was the one whose presence immediately shifted the emotional gravity of the entire scene: Liam Sterling. Liam was the matriarch's only son, Alara's childhood friend, and her closest, though often conflicting ally, in the Foundation. He wasn't supposed to be back from Geneva for another day. He stood there, arms folded, his usually gentle expression replaced by a look of profound, icy disapproval. He was the de facto chica of this narrative, the true heir whose good opinion Alara desperately needed. Alara's face, already red with anger, dropped into pure shock. Her terror was palpable. This was worse than a public confrontation. This was humiliation in front of the one person whose support she needed to secure her position. "Liam, what are you doing here?" she stuttered, her formidable voice suddenly small and uncertain. Liam didn't smile. He didn't blink. He just looked past the horrified architects and assistants, past the antique desk, and fixed his gaze first on the trembling map, then on Maya's resolute hand, and finally on Alara's enraged face. "So this is how the future president of the Foundation handles a deadline?" Liam asked, his voice low, steady, and carrying the weight of familial disappointment. It felt like a verdict rolling through the room. The administrative staff bowed their heads. Even the matriarch, still watching silently from the shadows of the doorway, seemed to freeze, observing her son's reaction. Finally, Alara yanked her hand free from the non-grip and stepped back, trying desperately to regain control and salvage her image. "This manager grabbed me first," she shouted, pointing a shaky finger at Maya. "She disrespected the chain of command, Liam. She is just a manager." Liam shook his head slowly. "I saw everything, Alara. And so did Mother." He tilted his head subtly toward the conservatory doors. Alara's heart plummeted like a stone. The matriarch, Mrs. Sterling, finally moved, stepping out into the light. Her presence was cold perfection, She was the embodiment of the matriarch of the original story model, Mama Tisa. But here, she was the true source of all power. "You promised me you had changed, Alara," Mrs. Sterling said, her voice clear and without inflection. "You promised me you were working on controlling these dramatic tendencies." I am, Mother, I am trying," Alara stammered, scrambling to justify herself. Mrs. Sterling lifted a hand to silence her. "Trying by attempting to destroy irreplaceable family property? By humiliating subordinates in front of senior staff? By embarrassing yourself in front of Liam?" Maya quietly stepped back, hands folded, eyes downcast, the perfect picture of professional neutrality. She didn't want trouble. She only wanted to protect her station and her integrity. But Alara wasn't done. She pointed at Maya again, her voice shrill with defensiveness. "This woman is insolent. She violated my authority. Why is everyone defending her? She's just a manager." That statement, the final, dismissive swipe at another person's humanity, made the air change. Slowly, Liam's eyes lifted. His voice was soft, but heavy with finality. "No one in this house is just anything, Alara," he said. Alara looked at him, stunned. He wasn't finished. "Everyone here has a role. Everyone here has feelings. Everyone here works hard to maintain the legacy you are trying to inherit. And every single person, from the chef to the matriarch herself, deserves respect." Alara blinked fast, realizing the depth of the hole she had dug. Her father, Senator Benson, was supposed to be the next witness to arrive. But the immediate condemnation from Liam and the matriarch was already catastrophic. Liam's stare was cold, colder than anyone had ever seen it. He was looking at the woman he thought was his sister and his partner, and for the first time, he saw only the ruthless, destructive mold his mother had created. The confrontation had begun, and Alara's position of absolute power had instantly dissolved. She stood exposed, judged, and condemned, not by a victim, but by the very family she was trying so desperately to impress. This chapter brings in the daddy's desperate reveal, adapting it to the new characters and setting. The stakes become incredibly high as a dark, violent past is uncovered, escalating the tension significantly. Liam's quiet condemnation hung heavy in the air. Alara, usually so composed, looked utterly shattered, her shoulders slumped, her eyes wide with a fear that went beyond professional disgrace. The matriarch, Mrs. Sterling, stood like a statue, her gaze dissecting Alara, a silent judge. Maya remained perfectly still, a professional ghost in the room, yet her steady presence was the unshakable foundation of the crisis. Just then, heavy footsteps echoed from the grand entrance hall, growing louder with each stride. The double doors to the library swung open with a muffled thud. Senator Robert Benson, Alara's father, a tall, imposing man with strong shoulders and eyes that usually held the shrewd glint of a politician, stepped into the mansion. His face, however, was not shrewd. It was etched with a profound weariness, streaked with sweat as if he had rushed there, not from a political meeting, but from a nightmare. His expression carried something far more profound than anger. It carried fear. Real, gut-wrenching fear. The remaining staff bowed quietly. Mrs. Sterling remained firm, her gaze unblinking. Liam stood his ground, waiting, his jaw tight. But Alara's entire body froze. Her previous terror was nothing compared to this. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible, laced with a plea. Senator Benson didn't look at her first. He looked straight at Mrs. Sterling and Liam, his eyes pleading. "Eleanor, Liam, I know you don't want trouble today," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "But I beg you, we must talk, immediately." Liam frowned, sensing the urgency and the raw fear in the senator's tone. "What is going on, Robert?" Chief Benson swallowed hard, turning his gaze to his daughter. "Alara, why didn't you tell them?" Alara shook her head fast, a desperate, frantic motion. She stepped backward, retreating from her father's accusing eyes. Her voice cracked, a raw, desperate sound. "Daddy, no, not here, not now, please don't." But he ignored her. "Why didn't you tell them the truth?" he asked again, louder this time, his voice cracking with the strain of a long-held burden. Everyone looked at Alara. Her lips trembled so much she couldn't speak. Liam stepped closer to her father, a cold dread beginning to seep into his composure. "Tell us what, Robert?" he asked calmly, though his eyes were sharp with suspicion. Senator Benson sighed deeply. It was the kind of sigh a man gives when he is tired of hiding, when the truth has become heavier than the lie. "It's about her past, Eleanor." "Liam," he began, his voice dropping to a somber tone. Alara covered her mouth with both hands, shaking her head violently. "No, no, Daddy, please." But the words were already rising in his throat. Words that could destroy everything she had built, everything Eleanor had painstakingly molded her into. Words she had spent years hiding from the world. The staff held their breath, frozen in place. Maya felt her heart beat faster, a quiet thrumming beneath her professional calm. Mrs. Sterling's expression remained unreadable, but a faint tightening around her eyes suggested she too sensed the impending catastrophe. "Robert," Liam said slowly, his voice now dangerously cold. "We are listening." Alara rushed toward her father, grabbing his arm with shaking hands, her perfect facade completely shattered. "Daddy, stop! You promised! You promised you would never say anything." Senator Benson's face twisted with profound sadness. "I only promised because I thought you had changed, Alara," he said, gently but firmly removing her hands. "But now I see, you are hurting people again. You are using your power to inflict pain, just like before." Alara broke down, a ragged sob escaping her lips. "Daddy, please. If you tell them, everything will be ruined." Chief Benson faced Mrs. Sterling and Liam again, his shoulders slumping. "My daughter, she is not the woman you think she is." Alara screamed, a raw, primal sound of terror. "Stop, please." But the truth, long buried, had already escaped her father's lips. Senator Benson wiped his forehead and continued, his voice heavy with self-reproach. "Years ago, before she even joined the foundation, before she learned to hide it so well, Alara caused a terrible problem in our hometown." The staff exchanged looks of dawning horror. Liam narrowed his eyes. "What kind of problem, Robert?" Senator Benson swallowed hard again. "There was a young girl who worked for us. A scholarship student. A simple house staff. Just like this manager here." He pointed weakly toward Maya. Alara shut her eyes tightly, shaking her head over and over. "Daddy, don't! Daddy, please! I'm begging you." But he went on, the words tumbling out, fueled by guilt and fear. "One day my daughter, she accused the girl of stealing a family heirloom. Just like today, she became enraged. She shouted. She pushed her. She punished her in front of everyone, publicly shaming her." Liam's heart dropped. The staff murmured, a collective sound of dread. Mrs. Sterling's face, for the first time, showed a flicker of something akin to profound disappointment, a deep line appearing between her brows. But that wasn't the end. Chief Benson's voice cracked as he continued, tears gathering in his eyes. "The girl, she didn't survive it." The room went dead silent. Alara gasped for air, as if she had been physically stabbed. "No, no, Daddy. You said we should never talk about it." Maya, despite her training, stepped forward without meaning to, a single word escaping her lips. She died?" Chief Benson nodded slowly, his eyes brimming. She collapsed while trying to run away from Alara's beating. We rushed her to the hospital, but she didn't make it. Her head struck the stone fountain. Liam's body stiffened. He stared at Alara in total disbelief. "Is this true, Alara?" he whispered, his voice laced with horror. Alara opened her mouth to speak, but her voice was gone. Her knees buckled. Mrs. Sterling looked at her protégé with cold, hard pain in her eyes. "Alara, is this why you fear being corrected? Is this why you've built such a wall of cruelty?" Alara finally screamed, a gut-wrenching sound. "I was only 17. I didn't mean to hurt her. I didn't mean to." But her father shook his head, his face a mask of sorrow. "You may not have meant to kill her, Alara, but you meant to hurt her. You meant to shame her. You meant to make her feel small. And that, my daughter, is a choice." Alara fell to her knees on the polished marble floor. Tears streamed down her face. I didn't know she would fall. I didn't know she would hit her head. I didn't know." The staff stood frozen. Some covered their mouths. Some turned their faces away. Maya felt her eyes burn with tears too, a deep wave of sorrow for the victim, and for the broken girl now revealed. But Liam stood like a statue, staring at the woman he had always admired, the woman he thought was his friend, his partner in the foundation, the woman he thought he knew. "How could you hide this from me?" he asked, his voice shaking with betrayed trust. This chapter introduces the immediate external threat, the consequence of the protégé's dark past, forcing a decisive action from the de facto chica, Liam, thus testing his integrity. Alara lay crumpled on the marble floor of the library, sobbing uncontrollably. The truth, torn from her father's lips, hung in the air, a toxic cloud of shame and historical violence. Liam, rigid with disbelief, stared at the woman he thought he knew, while Mrs. Sterling watched with the chilling detachment of someone who saw a flawed product of her own making. Senator Benson stood defeated, his face buried in his hands. Maya remained by the shelves, her professional facade strained by the sudden, heartbreaking revelation. "You meant to hurt her, Alara," Liam repeated, his voice low and devoid of warmth. "And you kept hurting people, even here, because you were never forced to face the true consequence of your actions." Alara crawled toward him, her hands outstretched. "Liam, please. I was a child. Mother protected me. I fixed it. We paid their family. We covered the medical bills. We made it go away. But you never took responsibility," Mrs. Sterling interjected, her voice cold and resonant. "You only learned to hide the mess better." Before Alara could plead further, the entire atmosphere of the house shifted. A harsh, aggressive sound, a deliberate, thunderous impact shook the front gates of the estate. Boom, boom, boom. The sound was not the respectful tap of a delivery or the polite chime of a visitor. It was the sound of a demand, of raw, unrestrained anger refusing to be contained. The security guard burst into the library, his face pale and slick with fear. "Sir, ma'am, someone is at the gate. He's demanding entrance, and he's refusing to leave." Liam's head snapped up. "Who is it?" he asked sharply. The guard swallowed hard, glancing nervously at the figure on the floor. "He says his name is Daniel Obasi, sir. And he says he is here for Alara." Alara let out a blood-curdling scream and scrabbled backward across the marble. "No, no, Daddy. He found me. He found me." Senator Benson staggered, clutching his chest. "Daniel. He promised he wouldn't follow us to the city. He promised." "Who is Daniel Obasi?" Mrs. Sterling demanded, her voice dangerously calm, cutting through the rising hysteria. Chief Benson's voice dropped to a terrified whisper. "The girl who died, the one Alara hurt. Daniel is her older brother, her fierce, protective older brother. They sent someone to collect the debt." The workers and remaining staff gasped. The external threat, the ultimate consequence of Alara's past, had arrived. Another massive bang rattled the windows. The house was under siege by the weight of its own secrets. Alara crawled toward Liam, grabbing the cuff of his expensive trousers with shaking hands. "Liam, please. Please don't let him hurt me. You're the only person who can save me. I know him. He hates me." Liam looked down at the desperate, weeping woman. The sight of her raw fear should have inspired pity. But the image of the young scholarship girl, running in terror before hitting the stone fountain, was burned into his mind. He gently, deliberately, removed her hands from his cuff. "He deserves to speak his truth, Alara," Liam said, his voice quiet but absolute. "And you must finally face what happened." Alara sobbed harder, her voice choked with tears. "Liam, I'm begging. If you love me, you won't let him in." Liam shook his head slowly, sadly. "That's the problem, Alara. I thought I loved a woman who valued kindness and fairness. You showed me today that you only value power and control." He looked toward the guard, his jaw hardening with resolve. "Open the gate." The guard hesitated, his eyes wide with disbelief at the order. Mrs. Sterling, however, gave a sharp, confirming nod. "Do as Liam says. This must end." The gate swung open slowly, a terrible, creaking admission of guilt. The figure who stepped onto the pristine driveway was indeed imposing. Daniel Obasi was tall, powerfully built, and his stance radiated an intense, focused energy. His clothes were modest, dusted from travel, and his face was a mask of cold fury. He carried a small, folded object in his hand, perhaps a photo. He walked with heavy, unhurried steps toward the mansion entrance. When he reached the living room doorway, he stopped. His eyes found Alara instantly, and the room felt colder than the marble floor. Alara gasped, shrinking into herself. "Daniel, please," she whispered. But Daniel didn't blink. His voice came out low and sharp, filled with years of pain. "So, you moved to the city, became rich, and thought you could hide from the consequences of your cruelty." He took one step into the room, and the remaining staff backed away, frightened of the raw justice he embodied. Liam stood strong, alert, placing himself between Daniel and the hysterical Alara. "I am Liam Sterling," Liam stated, calm and measured. Daniel nodded slowly, humorlessly. "I know who you are. The Sterling heir. I wonder what your kind, charitable family would say about the justice your future leader has stolen from mine." Alara began to shake violently. Liam remained firm. The external threat had arrived, and there was no turning back. The protégé had to face the consequence that her wealth and power could no longer contain. This chapter is the ultimate climax, shifting the focus from the dark past to the immediate, treacherous present. It exposes the protégé's financial plot, a betrayal of the family trust, and the true extent of her calculated deception. The tension in the library was suffocating. Daniel Obasi's presence was a physical weight, a demand for justice that no amount of sterling money could simply pay away. "I came so you would finally admit what you did," Daniel stated, his voice ringing with years of suppressed pain. "I came so you stop pretending you are worthy of what you have." Alara was a portrait of abject terror. She crawled backward, desperate, until her back hit the solid mahogany desk. "No, please. Please don't hurt me. I'll do anything. I'll pay you. I'll fund your sister's entire village. Just go." Liam stepped forward, placing himself between Daniel and the hysterical Alara. "Daniel, we understand your pain, but we will handle this through the proper channels. Alara must face legal consequences, but not violence." Daniel shook his head, a sadness replacing the raw anger. "It's not just about the law, Mr. Sterling. It's about truth. She must be held accountable by the people she hurt." He locked eyes with Liam. "She must come with me to answer for what she did." Alara's scream echoed against the marble walls. "No, Liam, no, please. Don't let them arrest me. You're my family. You know, I'm different now." Liam looked at her, his voice heavy with finality. "You weren't scared to hurt others. Now you must be brave enough to face the truth." Alara looked up at him with trembling, desperate eyes. "Liam, I love you. Please don't do this to me. I need your protection. I need to stay here. I need us." Liam, his heart hardened by her cruelty and lies, slowly knelt in front of her. The entire room held its breath. The matriarch watched, her face like stone. "Alara," Liam said softly, but the words were a painful hammer blow. "I am removing you from your position in the foundation, and I am cutting all ties. You have to face the consequences of everything you have done." Alara let out a heartbreaking, rattling sob. "No." Daniel stepped forward, ready to take her. The guard moved to assist him. Alara, collapsing in defeat, was gently lifted by a security officer. But just as the officer placed a supporting hand on her arm, something fell out of her tailored suit pocket and clattered onto the polished marble floor. It was a small, high-end burner phone. The screen lit up instantly from the impact. A text message was displayed. A message from someone saved only as Alpha G. The message itself was the real shock. Liam's eyes widened in horror. The text read, "Is he suspecting anything yet? We must move before he finds the shareholder papers." Liam froze. Daniel frowned. Mrs. Sterling's head snapped forward, her gaze riveted on the phone. Senator Benson staggered backward, burying his face in his hands. Alara, half-conscious, whispered in a raw voice filled with mortal terror, "No, Liam, don't read it. Please. But it was too late. The next line of text was worse, an undeniable confirmation of her deeper motive. Remember, once the matriarch approves the transfer of shares, everything becomes ours. Liam felt his whole chest twist. His breath stopped. His hands trembled. Alara's secret was far bigger than anyone imagined. The abuse of the staff was only a symptom. The goal was the total financial dismantling of the Sterling Foundation. Liam slowly turned to the half-conscious Alara, his voice a quiet, deadly whisper. Alara, what exactly were you planning to take from the foundation? Alara's eyes shot wide open in ultimate terror. She lunged, desperately grabbing for the phone. But before she could reach it, a second message popped up, chilling the air further. Plan B. If Liam tries to cancel the transfer, use the recording. Recording. Recording of what? Liam's voice came out in a shocked gasp. Alara, what recording are they talking about? Alara's mouth opened, her eyes swimming in fear, and then she whispered the name of the one person she had sworn loyalty to. Mrs. Sterling, please forgive me. The entire mansion held its breath, because the final chapter was about to uncover the complete, calculated deception she had been hiding all along. Daniel Obasi crossed his arms, watching coldly. Mrs. Sterling looked at her protégé with a mixture of devastation and rage. Maya felt a sting in her chest, realizing the truth was far more painful than just watching cruelty. Alara reached for Liam's hand. I can explain, Liam. I promise I can explain. But he moved his hand away. Play it, Mrs. Sterling commanded, her voice vibrating with authority. If she is innocent of this final betrayal, we will all know. Liam unlocked the phone. His finger hovered over the audio file titled Plan B, Transfer Backup. Everyone watched. Everyone waited. Liam pressed play. This chapter represents the definitive emotional climax, where the deep personal betrayal of the protégé's actions is fully revealed, mirroring the heartbreak of the original model. A heavy, agonizing silence fell over the library. The words on the small phone screen, Plan B, Transfer Backup, glared up at Liam, revealing a betrayal so profound it threatened to shatter the very foundations of the Sterling family trust. Liam's finger hovered over the audio file. He looked at the woman kneeling before him. Alara, his confidant, his partner in the foundation's future, now exposed as a ruthless saboteur. His heartbreak was visible, a raw wound on his usually composed face. Mrs. Sterling's voice was the only thing that could cut through the tension. Play it, Liam, now. Liam swallowed hard and pressed play. A voice, clear and chillingly recognizable as Alara's, filled the magnificent room. It was not a voice of rage or despair, but one of casual, arrogant plotting. Alara's voice, recording. It's perfect. Once the matriarch approves the transfer of her charitable shares to my name, the battle is over. Everything is ours. And if Liam ever tries to challenge the share structure or cut me out, I have the backup. Liam's breath hitched. He knew the matriarch had been preparing the share transfer, trusting Alara implicitly to maintain the family's philanthropic vision. He looked at his mother. Her face had gone utterly pale, a mask of cold devastation. Alara's voice, recording. He thinks I love him. He thinks I share his passion for the foundation's mission. He doesn't know. I just need the power and the liquid wealth that comes with it. And if he ever tries to cancel the transfer, I have the recording of Mrs. Sterling's emergency consultation. That will destroy his ability to challenge the board and her legacy. The room erupted. Liam staggered back, dropping the phone. His mother, the matriarch's sweet, late-stage illness, the one kept fiercely private to protect her influence on the foundation's global operations. Alara had recorded confidential details of her health to use as blackmail. Alara screamed, lunging for the phone again. No. No. Stop it. Mother, please don't listen. Liam, I can explain. It was only a backup, but it was too late. The recording clicked off, leaving the naked, chilling truth exposed. Alara was not just someone who had used power to bully and abuse staff. She was a mercenary who planned to dismantle the family's legacy and blackmail the matriarch with her own health crisis. Liam closed his eyes tightly. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. For the first time since the whole drama began, he cried. Quiet, solitary tears rolled down his cheeks, testament to the depth of his broken trust. Maya, watching from her corner, felt a deep sting in her chest. She stepped forward gently, her professional calm dissolving into simple human empathy. "Sir, I'm so sorry," she whispered. Liam nodded without opening his eyes. Alara crawled toward him, grabbing his feet, her perfect clothes now dusty and creased. "Liam, please, please forgive me. I was scared of being powerless. I didn't mean to hurt you. I love you. Please." Liam finally spoke, and his voice was steady, utterly devoid of emotion. "Alara," he said, "love doesn't destroy. Love doesn't exploit weakness. Love doesn't use private pain to extort power." She shook her head desperately. "Please don't leave me. Please." Mrs. Sterling, the indomitable matriarch, finally moved, stepping forward to loom over her protégé. Her voice, though low, was arguably the most devastating sound in the room. "You have failed every test, Alara," the matriarch said, her hands trembling. "You betrayed my trust in your character, your father's faith in your repentance, and Liam's love for your partnership. Your cruelty to the maid was only a training exercise for your final goal, the destruction of this family's name." Liam slowly knelt in front of Alara. "Alara, I am canceling the entire transfer immediately, and all ties are severed. I forgive you for what you tried to take from me, but I cannot forgive the intent to use my mother's illness against her." Alara let out a heartbreaking scream. "No, you have to face the consequences of everything you have done," Liam stated, his final resolve evident. Daniel Obasi stepped forward, his face solemn. "I will take her to the police, Mr. Sterling. She must answer for my sister first. And for this, she must answer to the law." Alara looked up at Liam, her eyes wide with terror and despair. "You're letting them arrest me?" Liam didn't blink. "You weren't scared to destroy others, Alara. Now you must be brave enough to face the truth." Alara sobbed so hard she could barely breathe, but she slowly nodded, her resistance finally broken. "I understand," she whispered. The guards gently lifted her to her feet. The betrayal was complete, the plot neutralized, and the foundation of the Sterling home, though shaken, was secured by the truth. This is the final chapter, providing the necessary resolution and explicitly stating the moral of the story, confirming the difference made by the house manager Maya, and concluding the narrative arc for the protégé Alara. The recording had ended, and the silence that descended upon the Sterling library was heavy, a silence of absolute, final accountability. Alara, her shoulders slumped, her resistance utterly broken, was gently guided to her feet by the security guard. "I really did love the idea of belonging here, Liam," she whispered, her voice cracked and hollow. Liam stood before her, his expression weary but firm. "And I wish you had shown that love through honesty and kindness, Alara, not through deception and control." The guards escorted Alara toward the entrance. Daniel Obasi followed close behind, his face still somber, but the fierce tension around his jaw had finally eased. He had his justice, not through violence, but through the revelation of the truth. As the doors closed behind Alara and the small, solemn procession, a profound sense of relief washed over the remaining figures in the library. The toxic pressure that had defined the house for years had finally been released. Senator Benson stepped forward, a ruined man, and stood before Liam and Mrs. Sterling. He looked older, smaller. "I'm sorry, Liam, Eleanor," he said, tears finally falling without shame. "I failed as a father. I should have made her face the truth years ago, instead of enabling the lie." Liam gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are not the one who caused this, Robert. We all must face the consequences of our choices." She needed to learn that lesson herself. Mrs. Sterling, the matriarch, slowly approached Liam. She did not cry, but the tightness around her mouth spoke of deep, agonizing betrayal. She gently touched Liam's cheek. "You handled this like a true leader, Liam, with a clean heart and a refusal to compromise integrity. I was wrong to focus only on ruthless efficiency. You are the rightful heir." Liam offered a small, tired smile. Then his eyes drifted across the room, past the scattered papers and the abandoned phone, to the quiet figure who had started it all. Maya Solis, the new house manager, stood by the shelves, restoring the priceless map to its proper place. She hadn't made a scene. She hadn't gossiped. And she hadn't run in fear. She had simply done her job with unwavering professionalism and a surprising moral backbone. Liam walked toward her. "Maya," he said softly. Maya turned, her demeanor instantly snapping back to polite, professional neutrality. "Mr. Sterling, I have secured the report binder, which was merely misplaced in the adjoining study. I apologize for the disruption this caused to the household." Liam shook his head. "No, Maya. You saved this household today. You are the only person who stood firm when everyone else, including my own mother, had trained themselves to bow in fear." Maya shook her head slightly, her gaze modest. "No, sir. I only did what was right. I am entrusted to manage the affairs of this estate, and damage to property or reputation is unacceptable." Liam smiled warmly, a genuine relieved smile that transformed his exhausted face. "That," he said, "is why you made a difference." The remaining staff nodded in agreement. For the first time in a very long time, the Sterling mansion felt alive with a clean, peaceful energy. There was relief. There was hope. Over the next few hours, the police arrived. Ilara gave her statement regarding the past homicide and the ongoing financial conspiracy. Daniel Obasi finally received the acknowledgement and justice his sister deserved. Senator Benson promised to dedicate his resources to honestly addressing the past. Mrs. Sterling began the painful process of dismantling the conspiracy and restoring the foundation's integrity. And Liam stood outside the mansion as the sun set, breathing the cool evening air. He felt free. He felt lighter. He felt grateful. When Maya walked past him on her way to coordinate the evening security, he stopped her gently. "You know, Maya," he said, "you remind me of someone my father used to describe." Maya blinked. "Who, sir?" Liam smiled softly. "He always said, a person of true worth is not the one who never makes noise, but the one who stands for the truth, even when their voice is quiet. You helped me see the truth today, Maya. You saw the secret I was too blinded by loyalty to see." Maya blushed and looked away shyly, her guard finally dropping for a moment. Liam continued, his voice resonating with genuine feeling. "Thank you, Maya. You made a difference, not by being forceful, but just by being brave." Maya smiled, a soft, honest smile that lit up her face. And for the first time, everything ended well. Everything ended with truth. Everything ended with the promise of a peaceful new beginning for the Sterling family.